All right, let's see here. These aren't yet? Not yet.
Well, you're all still here. That's nice.
Hello, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas Trumbull, thank you. That movie just never gets old. It just, I mean, it's interesting that Spielberg says it's the one that probably shows his naivete, how young he was, yet it doesn't seem to age for me.
No, I think it's a beautiful movie.
Could you talk, we had briefly talked about a scene where you were actually at the Guyland home early when we were in the green room. And I'd never heard this before, so you were actually on that location, and if you could explain why you weren't.
Well, I was on location. It was on location throughout the whole
Yes.
production, but we did exteriors at the Guyler home, you know, where the UFOs come out of the clouds and everything. But the moment he's mentioning is that there was an experiment that we did, which is not in the movie, because it was not entirely successful. But the intention was to have the little aliens inside the house, going up and down the stairs. And so there was a little experimental scene we did with kind of stop motion photography with long shutter exposures, and those the little girls in the alien outfits running up and down the stairs. So there'd be these blurry, kind of amorphous, almost ghost-like beings. And it just didn't work. And it's good that it hit the cutting room floor, because if it didn't work, it shouldn't be in there. But that's the thing that happens in movies quite often. You fortunately in movies,
Did you have names for the individual ship, the individual like four at the beginning, or did you call them by any, you know, like that's
not very much. We had some names I can imagine. There was the snow cone, and there was the cheeseburger, and there were a number of different spacecraft, the saucers. And what Stephen wanted was this feeling of extremely bright lights into the camera and lens flares and all this diaphanous softness to it. And that was achieved by my partner, Richard Irisich. Not that we didn't photograph the stuff, but compositing those shots was so diametrically different from Star Wars, which was happening at the same time, where all the mats are cut hard-edged models with no glow, no magic. It was just objects moving against stars. And this was all about glows and everything. It required the development of a pretty complicated optical printing technique, because it was all pre-computers and pre-digital compositing. And he figured this out using the original negative as a mask and all kinds of subtle things to retain all those glows in the composites, where UFOs would be behind the mountain or they'd come in front of a rock and the transition would take place, and the lighting and the lens flare would all seem to naturally flow through the shot. So I really give it to Richard Irisich for helping, you know, make that magic part of it happen too.
You, the red tail, was that then the ice cream, that always seemed like an anthropomorphized thing.
Well, that was Stevens, you know, that was Tinkerbell. There was an alternate ending music cue of this movie, which was When You Wish Upon a Star, which is alluded to in the score, but never really fully fleshed out. But there were actually two score endings, and because you see When You Wish Upon a Star, Tinkerbell in a little model on his table early in the movie. And so that was a test screening. I think it occurred in Phoenix, Arizona at a sneak preview. We tried both versions of it, videotaped the audience with infrared cameras, and Spielberg was trying to judge which was to use that music cue in this movie. But he decided against using it, which I think was a wise decision. But you'll hear it in the music. John Williams put a little bit of When You Wish Upon a Star in the score at the end.
I noticed this is also the cut without Carl Weathers.
Yeah.
No Apollo Creed in this. He plays a military policeman. One of the things, two things always have kind of confused me. Besides it being extremely cool, was there any practical reason why you had the ship flip?
No. The mothership emerges up, I mean, we planned this out, it wasn't any good, but when it comes up from behind the mountain, it looks like a big disc, a classic UFO disc, because it's curved. And when you see it come up behind the mountain, if you look very closely, you'll see a bunch of little things going on. There's R2-D2 upside down on the rim of the thing, because Stephen and George were very, very close friends. And so there's little inside jokes that appear there. So when she's looking at the UFO in the close-up, there's R2-D2 upside down. But there was other stuff. There was Volkswagen trucks.
Where's the Volkswagen? I looked for the Volkswagen.
You gotta freeze it and watch it. I mean, there's, in some of the wide shots of the mothership, once it's in place, the names of the effects crew are all buried up in the rim of the UFO. But you have to freeze frame it, really blow it up and analyze it to see it. These are all like little funny inside jokes.
That's part of why we're here. Right? You don't appear in it, right?
No, actually, I was going to be in it, but my performance was not good. But I wasn't cut out because of my performance wasn't good. It was a whole sequence that was planned and partly shot that didn't work. There was a huge sequence that Spielberg designed, which was called the cuboids. And there were these little cubes of light that came down in droves and flew all around, kind of checking everybody out like little robots. And there was a huge effort made to make that work, and no one did make it work. They were trying to rig plastic boxes on wires and hang them in the set, and it just looked stupid. And I was the engineer on the set with a phone trying to deal with the cuboids, so I got cut out of the cuboids. There was other stuff that was intended, which was a bunch of wire rig stuff where anybody who got close to the mothership would actually lift off and become weightless.
They mentioned the anti-gravity.
Yeah, so there's a little mention of anti-gravity, watch out for static discharge and loss of gravity, etc. It was just impossible to shoot, impossible to rig, and that got cut. So there are many ideas that don't make it.
Something that's always confused me is when the mothership originally opens, and that rather scary spider alien comes out, and it raises its arms, and then it's gone.
Right. Well, that was my little guy.
What happened?
It was just part of the magic of movies, He was just like the head alien,
right.
Came to look everybody in the eye and make sure it was the coast was clear or something. I mean, this movie is layer on layer on layer on layer of one thing happening and then it's gone, and then another thing happening and it's gone, and that's Steven Spielberg is a master filmmaker.
Can you talk a little bit about that? You directed Silent Running. You went on to direct Brainstorm as well. Just if you can give some kind of insights into just working with him, particularly at that time when he was really just still starting out.
Well, I've always been amazed by what Steven learned to do over the course of his career, and I think it's at its best right here. And part of it came from Jaws, I believe. They had enormous problems on Jaws, and the Bruce the shark doesn't work too good. And so that movie is largely shark-free, which makes it work. It's the suspense and the anticipation of what you don't see that actually makes it work. And so he's using some of that here as well. I mean, it's a master of suspense and attention, because what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? I'm in awe of that skill set and that filmmaking prowess. You can kill some of the house lights up here if possible so that it doesn't wipe out the image. And these will just cruise along while we talk, because I'd like to start some Q&A. Some of these images might spark some question you have, and it'll at least visually entertain you while we all do Q&A.
And there'll be, I think there are going to be microphones.
Yeah, there's a microphone in each corner. Yeah. So if you want to go to the corner and ask a question, then everybody can hear the question. You all look like you're in the movie. Basking in the glow.
A question about the Geiler house. It never really struck me before, but she's got moving boxes.
These are two people that are destined to be together. Both of their lives are in shambles. She's whatever. She's a single mother. and her house is a mess, mostly because of kids and her son and the toys and everything. But the house of Richard Dreyfuss's family, the only way this story was going to work was if you become convinced as an audience. So, I mean, he loves his kids. I think a couple of those kids were his actual kids. I'm not sure about that story, but it is what it is.
It's also, you know, I know, and certainly the first time I saw it, I was thinking about the trauma of divorce and, you know, a lot of the things that, you know, kind of compelled Steven Spielberg to become a director in some ways.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the Francois Truffaut story, which I've been fascinated with, absolutely. There's just a ton of techniques that have to do with miniatures, force of perspective, scale, that apply just as strongly to Close Encounters as they do to 2001 or any other movie using miniatures. It's just quite amazing that you can take a photograph of the real Devil's Tower, give it to an artist and say, sculpt this as a miniature, 1 foot high, and it actually doesn't look too bad. If you do the same thing in computer, it might not look as good, or might not be as photorealistic. So that's the filmmaker's choice to do that. I just have this proclivity to miniatures, to the kind of surprising things that happen with them that you can never really anticipate. So we have all these cameras all set up with Richard Yursich and I running around, turn this one on at 4 o'clock, turn that one on at 6:20, get the helicopter up in the air at 6:42, we're gonna get just the right light. And we just shot all these shots for them because the main unit was pulled out, left us behind.
And Spielberg had a standard that he developed on Jaws that he never witnessed the last shot, correct?
I'm not even familiar with that.
Oh.
I have no idea whether he did or what was the last shot.
Oh.
A few of those iconic films that you worked on, if you've got a favorite and why.
Actually, I don't have a favorite, and there's no reason.
Very politic answer.
Well, see, my point of view is that movies are a profoundly powerful visual art form. And I've been very fortunate in my career because I've done some of these movies for various strategic reasons, you know, to get my hands on cameras. And so they love me to bring my passion to it. They don't want to second guess me too much. So I've had these lucky things where I've been able to be kind of the support team for major directors and feel that I've been able to make a difference in their movies. And so that even though I'm not directing the movie myself, I'm proud of the result. But there's a theme behind it all for me, which I hope to be reaching fruition pretty soon, and you'll see part of it tomorrow. They hover. They have no jet engines or props or anything. They're weightless. And so the theme of it was that they may not be made of anything we know anything about. They may have no weight, no mass. There may actually be no matter there at all. And the tumbling of them was all kind of by way of saying, it's not George Lucas, you know, flying planes. It's not aerodynamic, and it's non-ballistic. One of the themes that you hear mentioned here is that they're exhibiting non-ballistic behavior, which is something that can go 2,000 miles an hour in a right angle turn, has no inertia. So it's one of the things. Yeah. So we were kind of trying to find a sweet spot because we're making a movie. It's a fictional movie, and I even found out recently on this UFOTOG film, we have stuff where the behavior of a UFO might be extremely erratic, or go in one direction, then in another, and then suddenly appear, and then suddenly disappear. Because if you get into it, you have to accept that they're not coming from outer space. They're not coming from they're not, you know, coming from Mars, or they're not entering our airspace through NORAD or anything. They're not visible. They just suddenly pop into our dimension. So Jacques Vallée is very much a supporter of his thesis, which other people share, which is that they are interdimensional craft that have no mass, that have no inertia, that don't behave according to anything we know. And they're probably much more related to dark energy and dark matter than anything. So they probably don't communicate electromagnetically, they don't, whatever. SETI is probably on the wrong track. There may be something very akin to consciousness. Consciousness may have a mass in the universe that's accounted for in dark energy and dark matter. So don't get me started on that, because I'll talk about it all night. But there's so many fun things to consider that are very heady issues about the universe and how it all works, which nobody really has a clue, frankly. 85–95% of the universe is completely unknown and understood. So we have over there in the corner.
Hi, I have a question. Thanks for being here. You work with great directors. Some strong differences that you want to speak about?
There are big differences between directors that I've worked with, and also big differences with directors I have not worked with, but who I know. And one of the ways that I try to understand or answer your question is that many really,
On this as well.
my partner Richard Yersich and I were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to consider doing the visual effects for Dune. Prior
for Jodorowsky's or for Lynch?
I can't remember. No, it was for David Lynch.
Okay, David Lynch.
But prior to that, Alejandro Jodorowsky came to my studio, and I offered him an office and a place to work for a couple of weeks at my studio. I said, because I just wanted to get to know who he was. And he had a visionary graphic artist known as, I can't think of his name at the moment, Mobius. Yeah, Jean Giraud. And so Mobius was there working with us, and I thought, this is going to be the most magical movie, because it was based on a lot of insects as spaceships and all kinds of organic designs that Mobius was coming up with. And I thought that Jodorowsky just struck me as a really out-of-the-box kind of director that was looking to do something quite extraordinary. The problem I had, which I'm not afraid of saying, is that he kept trying to hypnotize me. He would say, Douglas, you must do it this way. And he would like glare at me and do all this weird shit. And I said, this guy's really weird. He's trying to do a mind meld with me, and it's making me extremely uncomfortable. And so we kind of had a parting of the ways, but it wasn't just because of that, but it was also because I don't think he could get financing for the film.
Right.
And it didn't happen. And then when Dune came up again with David Lynch, I met with David Lynch and said, oh, this guy is also a very interesting character. He does amazing movies. I was scared out of my wits with Blue Velvet. So I thought, well, I'm not going to blame him for that. I thought, well, that's interesting. We'd like to do the job. But Richard Yersich and I met with the daughter of a big producer.
Dino De Laurentiis.
Dino, yeah. So it's Rafaela De Laurentiis. We're meeting with Rafaela. And she wants us to do this job. And she wanted us to bid the job. And I said, I can guess at what I think this might cost. We're going to offer you cost plus. It'll just cost what it costs. You have to pay for the equipment, pay for the crew, and we'll mark it up 10% or some thing. But we have to be safe. We're not going to bid the job and find out it costs twice as much. And she said, absolutely not. So that's the business aspect of the kind of thing I've been talking about for days here, is that there are dynamics going on in the movie industry you think are completely wacky, crazy, that make no sense to me, and it's reasons why certain things haven't happened. But we passed on the project, and others worked on it, and Dune is what Dune is. It wasn't what my vision was. And, it's all okay. People move on. But you got to know when to say no.
This corner.
Yes, hi. I just texted my daughter who's out in California, and she graduates next week from Cal Arts, and I said, I'm at a Q&A with Douglas Trumbull. Do you have a question? Do you want me to ask it? And she said, does he know anyone hiring an editor? But so I have a question, even though hers was on point for her. Do you have a central location where you do most of your work, or do you have to travel to?
I have a question now. Are any of you going to come tomorrow to see Ufotop? All right, okay, I feel better already. I was worried that nobody was going to come. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. It'll be a lot of fun.
Thanks, everyone.
And then 2001 is tonight at 7.
7.
Yeah.
Almost like what's really 2.5 hours there.